Chapter 4. A haunted house and a call for help. The streetlights shone down on the puddled pavements, making everything glow a vibrant golden orange, while the damp streets reflected fireworks exploding in the night sky, transforming the deprived concrete tenements and highlighting the trick-or-treaters who knocked on doors hoping for another handful of sweets. The three friends were all standing outside Eve's house with their bikes. Clovis and Tom were bundled up in their thick winter coats and both wore beanie hats, determined to keep the cold weather out. Eve insisted her black biker jacket would keep her warm, but the two boys knew she would be sniffling by the end of the night. "Have you got everything?" asked Tom, his breath swirling and disappearing into the cold night air. "Yes, a torch each, one camera, and the board," answered Eve. "Right then, let's go," said Clovis, pushing down on his pedal and setting off at a fast pace. After a 5-minute bike ride, they arrived at Whitechapel Tube Station and were just in time to catch the train. They loaded their bikes on and were lucky enough to find seats next to each other. "What did you tell your mum?" Eve asked Clovis. "They all knew he couldn't lie to save his life." "I said what you told me to say, that we're trick-or-treating," said Clovis. "Did she believe you?" "I think so." "I can't wait," whispered Tom. "I've always wanted to try a Ouija board. But I'm a bit worried now about what you said, Clovis. What if something evil does come through? What if something follows us home?" "Don't be daft," whispered back Eve. "We'll be all right. Nothing happens to the people on the ghost hunting documentaries, does it? Chances are it won't even work, it's just going to be a laugh. Your problem is you watch too many horror movies." "Yeah, she's right, those movies scramble your brain, make you imagine all sorts of weird stuff." Clovis was about to begin a speech on how the brain reacts to certain images and noise stimuli, but the others knew their friend well and were not in the mood for one of his long-winded scientific ramblings. Tom cut in quickly before Clovis could get going. "Want one?" he asked, handing packs of cheese and onion crisps to his friends. The train rumbled and screeched on for 45 minutes. Eve, Tom and Clovis chattered happily about their day and what they hoped to experience later. They watched as Halloween party-goers got on and off the train, and they laughed and nudged each other as they saw Frankenstein's monster trying to kiss a zombie, who in turn was attempting to take a drink from a bottle. She failed dismally, spilling it all over the floor and causing a fairy to slip and be picked up by a small hairy gorilla. The mood was a happy one, everyone celebrating much too loudly. "Next stop," said Eve, standing up and stumbling slightly as the train jolted abruptly. They all stood in the train carriage watching their reflections as the backdrop of the inky blackness rushed by. At last the train began to slow down and jerked to a stop. The doors slid open to reveal the station sign Lawton, then the tannoy speaker reminded its passengers to mind the gap. Weaving in and out of the party-goers and commuters, Eve, Tom and Clovis pushed their bikes along the Victorian tunnel system until eventually they were standing outside in the cold October air. Now just a short bike ride to Epping Forest, where their adventure really could begin. The old house apparently stood right in the middle of the forest, alone, derelict and dilapidated, a former shell of what once would have been a beautiful cottage. The friends sped towards it through the dark forest, chatting and shouting to each other in excitement. They had been riding for 10 minutes when Eve suddenly put her brakes on and rummaged in her backpack, pulling out a piece of paper. "According to Uncle Rufus's notes and sketches, it should be around here somewhere." "Well, I can't see anything but trees," said Tom. "Yes, but if nobody knows about this place, it's not going to be in plain sight, is it?" "It will be hidden behind trees of bushes or something," suggested Clovis. They put their bikes down, pointing their torches and searching frantically for a clue as to where the house could be. "There," Eve shouted eventually, pointing to a clearing in the trees. Everyone came to a stop and followed Eve's torchlight. "A chimney, I'm sure of it." "Can you see it?" Eve's voice was at a whisper, the boys could tell she was excited. "Okay, but are we really sure about this?" asked Clovis, who was by now a little nervous himself. Not only had he lied to his mum and his brother about where he was going, which was bad enough, but if they knew he was about to enter a creepy old house in the middle of Epping Forest to use a Ouija board, they would both completely flip out. "Yes," shouted Eve over her shoulder, and Clovis muttered to himself as he followed his friends through the thick bracken towards the looming old dilapidated house. "Close up," The house was bigger than the three friends had been expecting, and from what they could make out by torchlight, it would once have been an impressive gamekeeper's cottage. But now part of the roof had caved in and the trees and ivy had begun to possess the large front room. Perched high on the building, demonic stone gargoyles sat, crouched as if about to jump on any unsuspecting guests. The gargoyles' tongues protruded out of their beaky mouths, showing their displeasure with anyone who happened to be paying a visit. "Very charming, I'm sure," said Eve as her torch lit up a gargoyle who seemed to be staring straight at her. "Shall we go in then?" asked Tom. "After you," Clovis said, moving aside to let his best friend go first. "No, after you," replied Tom, a smile spreading across his face. "Oh, for God's sake, you too," said Eve, pushing past them. "I'll go first, you idiots. Anyone would think you were scared." She then began to do an impression of a chicken, clucking and flapping her arms about. All of a sudden, a fox cried out and the flutter of a bird moving in a nearby tree made them all scream. It's all right, only the wildlife," laughed Clovis, who was trying to relax a bit by thinking logical thoughts. Once inside, the group decided to base themselves in what would once have been the living room. Now, old lager cans, rubbish, rubble and wood littered the floor. It was cold, and the room smelled of mold and damp. In no time, Eve had set up the night vision camera on a small tripod in the corner, making sure that the whole room was in shot. "Never mind the dead, do you think we'll be all right? I mean, what if we come across someone alive?" asked Tom, as he began to clear a space for them to sit down. "What if somebody is living rough in here?" "Well, it doesn't look like anyone's been here for a very long time," said Eve. "Look, this newspaper is over 15 years old. I think we'll be okay." "Right," said Tom. "Put the Ouija board here in the middle. Leave your torch on, Eve, and let's promise each other that no one pushes the glass." "We'd be a bit stupid to do that," said Clovis. "It's taken us ages to get here. That's a lot of time wasted for one of us to just mess about." "All right, point taken. I was just saying," pouted Tom. "Right, let's do this," whispered Eve, "before we talk ourselves out of it." Rubbing her cold hands together, her eyes sparkled with excitement in the torchlight. She couldn't believe they were actually about to do this. If her Uncle Rufus found out, he would be so disappointed in her, but he wasn't going to find out, surely. This was their secret, and as long as no one said a word, there would be no need for any of their parents to know. The little drinking glass was set upside down in the center of the board. The alphabet letters curved across the middle and numbers sat in a line running along the bottom. One word was written on each of the four corners, yes and no at either end of the bottom, and hello and goodbye at either end of the top. If. "Okay, so who wants to ask it a question?" giggled Tom, nervously. "I will," said Clovis. His face was serious as he bent forward and placed his finger on the upturned glass. The others followed his lead. "Is anybody there?" Clovis's voice was firm and steady. His glasses had fallen to the end of his nose and his brow was furrowed in deep concentration. Eve and Tom looked at each other, excited yet scared at the same time. "Is there anybody there? If there is, move the glass." Clovis's voice was getting louder, more commanding. Suddenly, the glass jumped. "Whoa!" cried Tom, snatching his finger away. "What the hell?" shouted Eve. "Put your fingers back on, I'm sure this is just muscular movement. It's just our energies making it move. Don't worry, it's fine." Clovis had a calming effect on his friends. "How come you seem to know so much about all this?" asked Eve. "You know me," replied Clovis, looking a little embarrassed. "I did my research, that's all." "Go on then, keep talking. It's working, whatever you're doing," said Tom, staring hard at the board. All of a sudden a huge bang exploded above them. It sounded as though something had fallen onto the floor upstairs. "Oh my God, what the hell was that?" shouted Eve, jumping to her feet. "Maybe we should go. I don't think this was such a good idea." "Don't be daft, Eve, it's just the wind," said Clovis, pulling on her arm to get her to sit down again. Sure enough, as if on cue, a gust of wind suddenly howled through the old building, and the trees could now be heard to creak and moan. And then a tap, tap, tap noise came from behind them. "What's that?" Tom screamed, twisting his body round to look behind him. He clicked his torch on and scanned the room. Eve sprang up again like a nervous cat and shrieked, "Tom, for God's sake, you're scaring the crap out of me." "Look, guys, will you both get a grip," said Clovis. "It's a tree branch tapping on the window. Remember, there's usually a logical explanation to most things." Eve and Tom sighed out in relief. Clovis grabbed Eve's hands again and pulled her back once more to the Ouija board. "You're right, sorry, guys," laughed Eve. "Okay, Clovis, ask again." Clovis cleared his throat and began to call out again to any spirits who might be around. And once more, slowly but surely, the glass began to move. "Oh, my God, it's moving," whispered Tom. "Keep it together, guys," said Clovis calmly. "Don't break the circle. Can you tell us your name?" he asked the board. "If this glass spells a name out, I think I will die," whispered Tom. The glass began to move more steadily now, round in a circle. The noise it made scraping along the wooden board was one of the creepiest sounds Tom had ever heard. Then just as suddenly as the glass had started to move, it stopped. The wind outside was getting louder, the trees bent and groaning. Eve shivered in the dark room, her face was illuminated by the soft glow of the torchlight. "Shall we leave?" she asked. "I don't mind admitting it. I'm really scared now. This is way spookier than I imagined." "We can't go yet," moaned Tom. "We've only just got started." "It's all right, Eve," said Clovis. "Nothing bad is going to happen. This is just a piece of wood, remember. I don't think it's going to summon up the devil." "But you said sometimes evil ghosts can come through." "Yes, I know I said that, but really we've got no reason to believe that an evil dead person is trying to speak to us, have we?" They still had their fingers on the glass, and all of them screamed as it suddenly began to move again. But none of them let go. This time the glass moved towards the alphabet. One by one it rolled over the letters, stopping at different ones in turn, then moving to another. First an H, then an E, followed by an L and a P. "Help me," spelled out Clovis. Tom and Eve took big gulps and looked nervously at each other. "Who are you? Tell us your name," demanded Clovis. The glass started to glide across the board once more. "Comet, E," spelled out Eve. Again, the letters were making sense. Where shall we find you?" Eve's voice was very quiet, not quite believing what she was witnessing. The glass moved again, this time it was much quicker. Jerky violent thrusts shunted it at high speed across the board, as if whoever they were talking to was in a hurry, desperate to get the information out. The glass spelled out the word below. "Below?" queried Tom, looking at his friends in confusion. "What does that mean?" The glass moved slower now, rolling over the letters to spell out the word please. It picked up speed and moved over more letters. "Don't go." Then it began to slide across the board as if in anger. It went so fast, the friends had trouble keeping their fingers on top of it. They pressed down hard, but it seemed to have a life of its own, and without warning the glass flew off the board, violently spun through the air and smashed against the wall. Suddenly the banging noises started again from above. Eve, Tom and Clovis stood up and held onto each other, terrified. As if things couldn't get any more frightening, Tom now pointed upwards to the ceiling. The noise was beginning to sound like steady, heavy footsteps echoing through the empty house, slow, menacing and precise. "Someone's up there," whispered Tom in a shaky voice. "Shush," said Eve, looking upwards. They all fixed their eyes onto the ceiling and followed the noise with pointed fingers. It seemed to be going towards the top of the stairs. "I'll go and check. It could be anything," said Clovis. The footsteps continued, then a disturbing dragging noise could be heard. "Are you mad?" hissed Tom. "We need to check that no one is up there, playing tricks on us," insisted Clovis. "And what if there is?" replied Tom. "Yeah, what then?" said Eve. "We have to check. If we don't, we'll never know if someone human is messing with us, or whether there's the possibility that this place is actually haunted." Tom and Eve knew that Clovis was right and that he wouldn't give up until he got his way and explored all possibilities. With a sigh, Tom agreed. "I can't believe we are about to do this." "Neither can I," said Eve. "I suppose you're right, though." Clovis led the way slowly up the crumbling staircase. Eve followed in the middle as she didn't want to be at the back, and Tom brought up the rear with the camera. Clovis's torch lit the narrow staircase, revealing more rubbish, creeping ivy and cobwebs. Turning right, they shuffled into the doorway of the room they had heard the noises coming from. "Well, there's no one in here," said Tom, panning the night vision camera all around the room. "And it would be very difficult for anyone to walk about up here, as there don't seem to be many floorboards left," said Clovis. Tom let out a sigh. "I just don't know what to make of it all." "I know, me neither, but we all heard those noises." "They were definitely footsteps," said Eve, shivering and hugging herself. "Well, it's confused me," said Clovis. "I just don't understand." But as he was about to start one of his scientific monologues, he was interrupted by a man's raised whisper that growled throughout the house. "Help me!" All three friends screamed and ran as quickly as they could down the stairs, pushing past each other, all trying to be the first out and gain as much distance between themselves and whatever had called out. "Quick, get out, screamed Eve. In the confusion and panic, Tom and Clovis fell over each other, and both landed hard at the foot of the stairs. "Ow, Clovis, watch where you're going. Quick, grab the board and let's get out of here," cried Tom. Clovis grabbed their stuff and they ran to their bikes. Once on them, they rode as fast as their legs could pedal. Only when they reached the tube station did they stop to catch their breaths. And no one said a word until they were back on the train, where they whispered quietly to each other, running through what they had all just encountered, each of them trying to process what they had witnessed. They arrived back at Whitechapel just before 10 o'clock, relieved, tired and confused. "We say nothing to anybody about this." Eve glared at her two friends. They were all standing outside Eve's house. "Agreed, I need to get some sleep. And I need to analyze what happened," said Clovis. "Let's meet tomorrow. You guys come here, we'll have the house to ourselves. Uncle Rufus is out for lunch at the university," said Eve. "Okay, great," said Tom. "I've got football training in the morning, so I'll come straight over after that. We need to watch the footage back." "Remember, not a word," said Eve. "Wow, what a night. See you tomorrow and, guys, happy Halloween."